Okay, so starting the importing the background image into Fusion. So what I'm going to do is come up to the top, go Insert, and then Canvas, and then I'm going to insert the canvas from my computer by going into the correct folder and finding the background image that we're going to use. So we're using the plan for the TML boxes. I'm going to insert that onto this first plane here, and as you can see, it's already imported the file there. Okay, so then what I can go do once it's imported it, I can then go to Canvas over on the side here, edit the canvas, and then calibrate it. Now, what that enables me to do is to change the size so the correct scale. I'm going to rotate this round. The best thing to do is to take two known dimensions, and then you can just select those points, and then that will give you the correct size. So you go to right click over on the image, calibrate. Now on this one it's really good because we've got the scale in feet. So if I just select 2 points that are within the foot dimension and then tell it that that should be 2 millimeters, that then puts the image file to the correct size for N gauge. Obviously, if you're doing AA, you do 4 mil. That's now set as an N gauge. You can also do things with right clicking and doing this. Edit canvas. You can rotate the image slightly if you need to, so you can get it at the correct angle. You can also, using these arrows, move the image around so you've got it at the correct position where you want it. Okay. Once you've done the first side, just clicking OK, zoom back out with a rotation tool, and then I'll insert the second canvas, which is the same image, but what I'm going to need it for is the end-on view. Selecting the side plane this time. I can hide the image that I don't need using the little eyeball key here. Zoom in on that image, do the same again, calibrate, taking 2 known points. There, telling it's 2 millimeters, and again that's now set to the correct size. So what we're going to have now that I've imported this, we're now going to have a jump from this extra recording we've done because of an issue with the recording into what was recorded on the SAT lid rail. That's it. So over here in the canvas, you can see where the mouse is. There's like a little eye button. If you click on that, you can make them visible or invisible. And you can do the same when we start to draw the actual wagon itself. Okay, so I'm going to start on that plane there. Come round some side on. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is within the printer itself, when you print anything, it's got to be supported to the print build plate. Unfortunately, when you do that, you end up with all these little marks on the surface where the supports connect to the surface. So to get around that, you either want to print with all those supports on the bottom where they're not going to be seen, or on a surface where they can easily be filed off. Also, when you're printing hoppers, because we're printing with a resin, it's got a liquid in there, you end up with a typical glass upside down and water, you get a vacuum. So you can't really print too well with a hopper without getting lines on it. So the best thing I can do with the hopper when I print it is to actually print it in 2 parts. The top part is going to go obviously from the top down to this line here, and then the bottom part will be there downwards. That then gives me a flat surface that I can turn upside down and then file flat once I've printed it for the supports on both internal sides. Okay, so they won't be seen once it's finished. Okay, so what I'm going to do then is create a new component which will then become the top half of the body, and then I can rename it as body. You can still just about see the canvas, but because I'm now working on a different component, that becomes a little bit more opaque and a bit more difficult to see. Hope you can all see it okay. What I can do is I can edit the canvas, and then on the side over here I can just increase the opacity slightly, which might make it a little bit more visible for you. It's clear enough for me that I can see it. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do then is start to draw the body. So if I come up the top here, create a sketch. When I do that, I'll then go into the sketching process. And I can start to then, once the computer catches up, select the surface, which is going to be the same surface that I'm looking at. At the bottom down here, and this is called the timeline, and everything I do will add something into the timeline. So that's my sketch that I've opened at the bottom. Going back to the top, I'm going to select to draw a box first of all. So normal 2-point rectangle. I'm going to zoom right in, get it into the corner. So I've now got the box starting in the top corner. Let's zoom out, across the other side of the wagon. I'm using my roller ball on the mouse to move in and out. And then going down again to the bottom corner there. So you can see now the outline is now blue. When it's blue, what that means is it's undefined. Whenever you do a drawing, you want it to be defined so that any changes you make are then editable later on within the software. If you leave it undefined, what you can end up finding, oops, somebody jumping in there, do FDM and SLM both have the same issue with supports? No. Resin printers are a liquid, and FDM printers, they print with filament. So that prints direct onto a plate, whereas with the resin one, it's printed upside down in a bath of liquid, so it bounces up and down in this liquid, whereas the resin, the filament prints direct onto a build plate as if it's like a table type thing. So to turn this from an undefined box with blue outlines to a defined box, I'm going to use a hotkey, which is D on my keyboard. What that then allows me to do is dimensionize. So he's not doing it. So now I can give it a dimension. I'm not going to change the dimensions because it's obviously working to the drawing. Okay, I've come out of the sketch, and now I'm going to extrude it, which allows me to turn this 2D image into a 3D box. So all I'm going to do is create a small box to start with, give it a 9. I don't really mind what size it is at the moment, because what I now need to do is take the canvas and move it so that that box is in line with the end-on view. So I'm going to edit the canvas, and then these controls in the middle here allow me to move that canvas around. So I've got left and right, and then I can angle it if I need it. So it's going to move it across. Takes a little bit of fiddling to sort of get it where you want it. Okay, so that's side to side, it's probably there or thereabouts. And then up slightly. Okay, so I would say that looks pretty much where I want it to be. So I'm going to go back to the body, go back into the timeline down to the extrude, edit that again, and then I can drag that to the exact width that I want. As you can see, it's jumping across in 1 mm sections. So all I'm going to do is go into here and then use my keyboard to redefine that. Get to exactly where I want it to be. Okay, so that box now is the exact size of what the hopper will be in the end. Rather than drawing the whole hopper completely, what I'm now going to do, because the wagon is pretty much symmetrical, is split this into 4, because there's no point drawing it 4 times. I can just split it into 4 and then mirror all the elements across to save myself a lot of work. So to do that, I'm going to go up to this construction part up here and do an offset plane. What that then allows me to do is select the plane, so the planes are the sides. I'm going to select the end one. It gives me this plane here, and then I can move that wherever I want it. Okay. What I should have done first of all is taken the measurement 100.699. .34. Back to that. Minus 50.34. So that plane there will now allow me to use this split body function. If I open that up, on the side here I've got body to split, so I'm working on the box there, and then the splitting tool is the plane. And when I click OK, what it's done, I come down to body over here, this has now created 2 bodies for me. I'm going to get rid of that one, and then I'm going to hide that construction plane because I'm not going to need that again. The next thing I'm going to do is measure that 13.36, 6.8. Create a construction plane from that side that's going to be, and then again, if I split that body using that plane, hide the plane. So going back to there, if I bring that drawing back. Okay, so we've got the drawing to work to now. So what I'm going to do to start off with is this top rail along the top. So go back onto my sketch, select the plane I'm going to work on, which is the side. Again, I'm going to use a rectangle. There's 2 ways to do this top rail. Looking at the pictures, it's not a rectangular shape. It's got a bit of a diagonal edge to it. So if I go to the pictures and show you that, you can see there's a slight diagonal edge. So the top edge is slightly smaller than the bottom one. So I'm going to draw another rectangular box. Now, you've got these things here called constraints. Now, these are like rules or laws that we can work to. Each of them does a different thing. So one that I can show you quite quickly is a snapping tool. So that snaps into the corner, so that when I draw this box now, it will always be in that top corner, no matter what I do. Okay, I can then drag it across. I'm going to get it at the right height. Looking at the drawing, it's about there. Now I'm not gone to the end, so that I can show you the next the next constraint, which is coincidence. So if I click on coincidence and take that top corner of the box I've just drawn and select top corner of the original box, it will now snap those 2 edges together. So they're now exactly the right size. Again, you can see the bottom edge isn't defined because it's light blue. So I'm going to go with my hotkeys into dimensions again, select the bottom edge, select the top edge. That then brings my dimensions to the side. Again, I don't need to change that because I'm working to the drawing. It's already predefined. Just select that. That's defined onto there now. The next thing I'm going to do is extrude that out slightly so that it becomes the right size. Okay, so I'm going to drag that out by 1 millimeter. So I've now got that top edge there. Again, looking at the pictures, I said that that was diagonal. So what I'm going to do is then go onto the new sketch again on that edge, select the line going from that corner in line with there. So I've come to the bottom here, and now I've got another coincidence. You see how it's putting a blue line just below my mouse cursor? So that's now locked to that edge, so that when I do that, it would automatically be in line. Now, obviously we don't want that to be snapped there, so if I just move across slightly, we've now got a slight diagonal edge. Again, it's undefined, so to define it, again, do my dimension key. Now, the reason it's not defined there is not the length, because it's snapped top and bottom, but it's the angle. So if I click on the line, and then come down to that bottom line, and then come out slightly, it defines my angle. And then if I click enter, it's automatically now defined. So by now having that line, what that allows me to do is click in that little triangle that's left, right click, extrude. If I zoom back out and spin it round, I can then extrude that diagonal off. You can see it cuts there. And went the other way, add it on and join it. Now with the extrusion to cut, I can do one of two things. I can drag it all the way across to the middle of nowhere. The problem with that is if you then go back and add anything there, it will automatically cut it out afterwards. You can define the length by just typing in the length you want over here. Or if I spin the drawing round, like those drawings there, I can then click on this edge and it will define the length of it to that edge. So if I now change this plane on the end, it will automatically bring that cut with it. You can see how it's left a tiny little bit on the end here. So I'm going to go back into edit feature. I'm just going to drag it just that little bit extra just to cut it off. Okay, if I go back into the drawings, if you look, if I find the drawing picture, show it's a close up of that top rail. I don't know if you can see it particularly well, but the bottom corner is curved slightly. So I'm going to add that curve in by selecting that edge by just clicking on it and then doing a fillet at the top here. What that then does is basically puts a curve into the edge. So I can drag this arrow in slightly. You see it curves it in. Now we haven't got a defined size, so I'm just going to go with one that looks about right, probably 0.3 I would say. And the top edge was exactly the same. I'm going to put a slight curve onto that. Again, going for a similar sort of size just to make it look reasonable. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to work on is I'm going to put in the ribs. Now, again, going back to what I was saying, I want to make my life easy. I don't want to draw every individual single rib. What I want to do is draw it once and then have it copied across. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, the ribs on the side, they don't go all the way to the edge of the bottom, they're slightly indented. So I'm going to find out by clicking on this edge at the top here, the length of that edge, because it says at the bottom is now 0.6 millimeters. So I'm going to bring those ribs out so they're 0.6 millimeters level with the bottom of this line. So zooming in, again, create a sketch at the top, select the plane, and a rectangular. So again, I'm going to lock into the bottom, drag across it's the right width, which is about that far, and all the way up to the top. And then I'm going to define it again. So D on the short pad, click that line at the bottom, D again, and do the same. Now that's come up with adding this dimension is going to over constrain it. So essentially what's happened is automatically it's decided when I clicked the box and drew it from the bottom to the top, that it's defined the height automatically by itself on the constraint. So the only dimension that's not constrained then is its position left and right. So if I click on that line there, go to the end. Once I do that, I've now got a defined distance from the end of the wagon to the start of the rib. Again, if I go over the rib, it highlights a different color. Do right click, extrude. I'm going to spin this round so you can see what happens. So you've got the arrow on the side here. Because it's sticking out, I want to come outwards with it. So it's a positive number, not a negative. If I was doing a negative number, it would cut into the wagon. So I'm going to come out by 0.6 millimeters, which brings it in line with the bottom of the curve on the top rail. That's now defined. Again, looking at the pictures, they're not particularly curved on the outside, so I'm going to leave it with a rectangle. But as we can see, there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 4.5 ribs along this side. So if I come up to the top, rather than drawing each one, I come up to the top, I've got a rectangular pattern up here. I click on that, come over to the side, I've got pattern type. Now what I want to do is the whole of that rib. So I've got to change the pattern type from faces to features. And then it gives me an option of selecting the object. So coming down into my history at the bottom of the timeline, what I do is I select on that extrusion that I've just done. That then picks up that rib. Direction that I want to do, so select the direction and I click bottom edge of the wagon. So it now knows it's got to pattern it left and right on that wagon. So we know that there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 ribs that I've got to add, plus the one that I've already got. So I've got to change the quantity to 6, and then I can drag it across, and you can just about see as I come across, it's adding in all the extra ribs. Now if I just drag it across so they all line up where they should be, click enter, all those ribs are now drawn, nice and easy. What we've got though is this one on the end is hanging off. So I'm just going to get rid of half of it by spinning the model round, clicking on the back edge, extruding, dragging it out because I know that I'm not going to draw anything on that edge, and that automatically deletes that extra bit that was there. So I've now got the 4.5 ribs. I've noticed that slightly different size, half of the normal rib in that one. So what I'm going to do is going to check the width. That's 1.57. That's 0.49. Calculator. Yeah. 1.57 divided by 2 and minus 2.95. So what I'm going to do then is spin the model around slightly on the edge. If I click on this whole side now, I'm going to extrude that just to make them even by 0.295. So that should now be 50% of that. Okay, so that's all the ribs done on the side, top rail done. So I'm now going to spin this round and work on the end of the wagon. So looking on the end, we've got all these little indentations in the side. So I'm going to use a similar technique to draw those as what I was drawing with the ribs. I'm going to come onto the side, bring in my drawing. Again, you can just about see the indentations on the drawing. create a sketch onto the side, zoom right in, 2-point rectangular box, click top corner, bottom corner, 3. I'm going to go 2 mil because it's close enough. Okay. So again, I've defined the sides and the top, but it hasn't got a defined position, it's just floating there. So I can define the top by clicking top edge to top of the wagon. That's now the height defined, and then the side edge to the side of the wagon, and that's the width defined. So that's now stuck in that position there. If I go internally onto the box I've just drawn, do an extrusion, because it's indentation now, it's going to be a minus number. Now, looking on the side of the wagon, it doesn't particularly go in far, but the printer can't give me an indentation that's too small because it just gets flooded with resin. So I'm going to define that indentation as minus 0.25 millimeters, and then the resin should flow back out of that as it prints. So I've got one of them now, and I noticed on the picture that there's 4 up and 4 across. Because I'm only doing half the wagon, I'm going to do the 4 up and 2 across. So again, going back to my rectangular pattern, select that, and then select features at the top here, selecting the extrusion that I've just done, the direction that I want to do it. So I'm going to go downwards, drag that arrow down slightly so that it's already working in the downwards direction, and there was 4 of them. Spin that side on, and I'm going to drag these down so the bottom one's in line, and you can see they've all now gone in exactly the right position. What I can then also do is a sideways one, and just drag that arrow across. Now there's only 2 of them. Change that number to 2 and drag those so they're in line. So I've now got my 4 extrusions on the end in 2 rows and all the ribs. Okay. Body-wise now, what I'm going to do is mirror it up so that I've then got the full wagon before I start adding in the hopper and before I add in the railings on the end. Now I could draw those, but the reason I'm not going to do them now, I'm going to actually create an extra file because some of them didn't have these railings, if I'm correct, especially the Foster Yeoman ones, I think. So if I zoom that back out a little bit, I come up to the top here, and under the Create banner, scroll down to Mirror, change it from faces to bodies, select the body that I want to mirror and the side that I want to mirror it on. So I'm going to spin that round, selecting that side. I've now got my 2 quarters there. I'm going to then combine those together at the top here. So selecting combine. It's got target body and tools body. So I'm going to use target body is going to be body number 1 so that it doesn't start changing all the bodies. If I start with target body 4, then everything from then on would be named body 4. So if I select target 1, tools body is body 4, and then join, I've now got half of the hopper essentially. So now that I've got to this point here, I'm going to file, save that, and then file, save as Foster Yeoman boxes. A little bit. Go back into open. In the TML box.
Carl?
Yeah, shoot.
Hey, so is it not possible to define the ladders as a separate part that you kind of show or hide as part of the model with Fusion? So you don't have to. So you don't, rather than having 2 different files, you can have one file and then just the ladders as a separate part, so to speak?
I could draw them as a separate part, but because I want to print it all as one part, I would then have to, every time I wanted to print it, I'd then have to go into the software and join them together.
Okay, so that'd be an alternate way of.
Yeah, it's an alternate way. Yeah, definitely, it's a different way of doing it. Yeah, it's a viable way of doing it. So I'm going to go on to the end here and then draw the railings here. None of the pictures I had showed particularly well whether it was a flat floor or a mesh. So I'm going to just draw it as a flat floor because I think that's going to be easiest for the printer. So first thing I'm going to do is select its height. Now it was roughly halfway between the middle two boxes. Again, create a sketch, select the side, create a 2-point rectangle, bottom corner, that side. Define the length, define the height. So the height here is only 0.28 millimeters. Now, knowing what the printer's like, that would be very, very flimsy and it wouldn't particularly print very well. So I'm just going to increase it slightly and take the hit on realism to 0.4 millimeters so that I know it's going to stay there, and when I print it, it will print well. Again, define the height. I'm going to round that to 4.5 ease. So the length is 12.75. I'm going to redefine that, get rid of that 4 so that it's again easy. Then I need to make sure that it's centered. So I'm going to work out what the width of the bottom of the wagon is, was 13.6. 6 minus 12.75. 0.425. So from the side of the box I've just drawn to the side of the wagon needs to be 0.425, and that's now centered and defined. Again, if I go in, right click on the box, extrude, spin the wagon round, I can now drag it out to the length on the drawing. Okay, now for some reason we have a different height there.
Carl?
Yes, shoot.
Yeah, you know, if you wanted a mesh floor, could you just do the supports on the floor and just leave those? Or would they be?
Yeah, that's possible. Okay, so now having done the extrusion outwards, it's got a little triangular bit underneath here. So what I'm going to do is draw on that bottom edge. In fact, scrap that, undo that. I'm actually going to draw on the side edge. And I'm going to use line to draw this because it comes down slightly and then diagonals in. Now you can see how it's not snapping to the side of the box for me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave it floating out here in mid-space. Go back up to the coincident constraint, tell it to click to that line. Now again, that's now clicked to that line, but it's floating. Okay, so I can define the height that I want it to be. That there. Click on the dot there, and then the corner of that, and then I'm going to tell it it's 0.5. Now asking for defined there, and now it's fully defined. Click on the inside of the drawing, extrude, spin the view to the bottom slightly, and I'm going to just bring it in. bring it in by 0.3. And I've got to do exactly the same there on the other side. So go into the history, I'm just going to edit sketch, make a note of the dimensions, which is 0.9. Finish that sketch, go back out, spin across to the other side. I'm going to hide the canvas because it's now in my way. Can't see you well. Then draw on that edge. And click on the line. You can see how I've got the other side in there. What I could do is draw down slightly and then coincidence that corner. Now the line's going to be identical on both sides. Then draw another line from there inwards. And then use coincidence constraint. Click there. Getting right into that corner. Now, again, that's drawn in coincidence. If I extrude again. Right, it's not doing that now because that line hasn't got a line from there to the top there. So if I just draw another line in, I've now got that fully defined. It'll allow me to extrude that inwards by 0.3. What's that chat that just popped up? Who has the music? Not guilty. Okay. So the next thing I'm going to want to do is add in the railings. So they look like they go probably level with the height of the hopper, looking at that. So I'm going to draw those by first of all creating an offset plane. So click on construction, offset, and it's going to be offset from the edge of the hopper, edge of the landing there. So I'll now select that edge, I'm going to offset it slightly, and I'm going to bring it in by minus 0.3. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to draw the railings themselves. So I'm going to sketch on that offset plane. Try again. If you can hear someone talking, you might remember a kid in the background, he's playing the Xbox. Okay. So I'm going to draw a line. Again, it won't snap to the edge there because it's an undefined edge. I'm going to draw a line upwards. And I'm going to draw coincidence to that edge. A coincidence to the top edge. And then need to define its distance from the edge inwards, 0.4 Ps. I'll do the same on the other side. Now it will snap there because it's got this purple line that goes across, and that's because I put that coincidence in there. So I'm going to draw a line up, define from the edge to the line, it's 0.4, the same as the other side. I'm going to draw a line across the top. So I've now got the outside edges. If I then go fillet and do, I can either select the two edges, or you can see as I'm moving my mouse around, it will put that red line in. So I've just clicked the two edges. I've now got that fillet in the corner. It's not a particularly sharp bend, so I'm just going to define it as 0.5 millimeters. Maybe a bit more than that actually. 0.7. It's now put a radius in there at the top there. I'm going to do the same on the other side. So I'm going to do there to there, and then 0.7. So that now is the outside edge of the railing drawn. Okay. If I finish the sketch, I can then go into create again and do pipe. And then when I select that line, I can then add in a railing. That's massive, that the one it's drawn in there. So I'm just going to change that down. It'll come down to 0.3 millimeters. I've now got my railing, the outside edge. Let me just have a quick look. How many should there be? 2 upright. 3 uprights. So I need to have 1 in the centre. So what I'll do is go. I can either create a new sketch and then draw those individually, or I can go back to my timeline at the bottom, right click on it, edit sketch, and I can go back in there and do an extra bit onto that drawing. If I draw a line again, if I put the cursor on this top edge, as I drag it across, it will snap to a triangle when I'm in the middle, and I can draw directly down to the bottom edge, and I've now got the centre line. I'll go to do the same again, cross. Won't find the middle there. So it's not able to find the middle there. So what I'll do is I'll inspect it, that edge to that edge, and that's defined as 5.975 mil. Draw the line, and then dimension from the line to the middle, which was 2.9875. Same on this side. When I finish sketch, they won't have then put the pipe automatically in. So I've got to go back again, pipe. I'm going to bring up on the side here the sketch that I've just been working on, and now to define, I'm just using control here to select, won't select each one. So what I'll do is I'll just leave it as it is and draw each one individually. Now at the moment you can see it's trying to cut because it wants to cut up into this top rail. Now if I just change on the side here from cut to join, it will automatically join the pipe in, and that one's now complete. Do the same on the next 2. And then we'll turn that sketch back off, because otherwise you'll see the lines and the purple markings for everything else I do. And get rid of that background. You can now see the railings are drawn in. How well those railings will print, I'm not entirely sure. So I've never tried printing that thin and that high before. It's 0.3 millimeters. You might find it'll either wobble or just not print at all, but I'll give it a go and see what happens. So go back to the picture. I think that's pretty much the top half of the hopper complete. So actually there's, on the side there, there's ladders, but I don't want to do that initially. Chat. Is the PR? Yes. Number range was 3178 to 3195. Okay. So what I'm going to now do is create the other half of the body. So again, go create, mirror. It's already selected the bodies. I'm going to make sure it selects the correct one. So body 1, and then the mirror plane. Let's spin it round onto that edge. Okay, I've now got the full wagon, and then I can just do combine body 1 and body 5. What I don't have then is the hopper part. I've got two ways of doing this. I can either use what we call the shelling software, click at the top, edge, and then tell it the inside thickness to be whatever dimension you want. I'll go 1 millimeter. It's not liking 1 millimeter, he says. There we go. It's not likely because what it's trying to do, you can see the blues wrapped around the side, so it's trying to use the whole edge. So the next best option would be to draw it in myself. So using the rectangle, so the rectangle from there to there, and then define the size of that rectangle. So from the side to there, 1 millimeter, edge, edge, 1 millimeter, 1 millimeter. So now I've got the hopper drawn, extrude that.
Carl, is that as normal kind of wall thickness that you use, 1 millimeter?
Well, no, it varies really. You can use anything you want. I would say probably the minimum you'd want to go down to is 0.4.
What do you have success with for vehicle bodies? I suppose is a question.
If I was printing like the EMUs that I was showing last night, I'm using 1 millimeter on those because I want the strength on them. I could probably take this down comfortably to about 0.6, I would say, that I want to go down to. So now you can see from what I did there, I've now got the hopper part as well. Any questions at that point?
Yeah, I've got a question, Carl. I don't use Fusion. Hello.
Who is it? Where
it's
are
Gary.
You? Gary. Hello, Gary.
Hi. Yeah, I can't think what I use at the moment, but I find it doesn't work as accurate as Autodesk Fusion. So I draw things 10 times larger and scale them in the slicing software, and I get a much better result.
Okay.
But I think that's just a problem with the software that I'm using. I think the Fusion will go down. Obviously, if you're talking about 0.4, I'd struggle at the scale of drawing at that scale.
I can draw down to any scale I want. The limitation is the printer. It will print layers of a thickness of 0.01 millimeters.
Yeah. No, the problem I'm using SketchUp.
Yeah.
It's the full version, but it can't work that accurate. So I just draw 10 times bigger and scale it down in the slicing software. But you've got much more control over your dimensions.
Yeah.
I would have. Oh, thanks.
Yeah. That's right. Any other questions? Okay. Right, so
just quickly, Carl.
Yeah.
When you did the handrails on the back,
yes.
You didn't start from the plan, did you?
No, because I noticed
There's a good reason for that.
So what I noticed is that if I bring the plan back up, the plan's at a slight diagonal. You see how it's sitting slightly low here?
Yeah.
But on this edge, it's sitting at the right height. The indentations are as per the plan.
Yeah.
And if you look at the picture of the wagon, the railings are sitting halfway between the middle two indentations. So I've drawn the railings halfway between those middle two indentations. So either the end-on view of the plan is incorrect, or the side-on view of the plan is incorrect. Which one it is, at the moment, I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, you're running into parallax issues.
Parallax issues? What's parallax?
Well, unless the unless where you're doing your measurements from is actually level with the plane of the drawing, it's you know how when you look at something top down, and
If I understand what you're getting
it's
at.
like you're looking top down at an empty tin can,
Yeah.
and you can see the bottom of the tin can is a smaller circle inside the ring of the tin can, even though you know that the bottom of the tin can is the same diameter as the top.
Yeah.
So sometimes you get that when you're working from a drawing. If you're doing detail work and the drawing that you're working from, the plane of the drawing that you're working from is below the face that you're actually putting the detail into, you run into that kind of issue. I mean, it's not necessarily parallax issues, isn't necessarily the right term, but so things appear to be the right size, but when you actually move the face that you're working on to be level with the plane that the drawing is on, you find that that it's possibly slightly out a little bit.
Yeah.
I've found similar kind of problems to what you run into there, Carl, but it's normally from scanned. When you scan something, the scanner's not quite right, and you get those kind of alignment issues. Like it looks like the scan's rotated like by a fraction of a degree.
Yeah.
So
So
at one end, it's not the same.
what I can then do is we can go into the canvas.
You can rotate it, can't you? Yeah.
Edit the canvas. Like that. And rotate that. That.
I mean, it's going to be minuscule amount, like quarter of a degree or something ridiculous.
Carl, can you bring up the picture you've got of the end again, please? I want to have a look at something on your picture. Right, if you notice, the indentations on the prototype wagon start lower than the top side rail.
Yep.
On yours, and on the plan, they start literally at the bottom of the top side rail, which is why your walkway is a bit higher than on the plan.
What we can then do is go back in the timeline.
Can I just say something, Carl? I know these were batch wagons. I don't know if there's any differences.
There's a lot of different detail differences between different batches of these, isn't there? So it could be that, couldn't it, Paul? Yeah.
I'm just saying it's quite a complicated thing, these batches of wagons. This wasn't it.
So what I've done here at the bottom is I've rolled back through my timeline, back to the point where I initially put this first indentation in. Go back into the sketch. I can just redefine that, move that down slightly. Then when I come back through, finish the sketch off there, come back through, what that'll do is it'll move all those indentations down according to the plan, and then I can redefine the height of that, bring that down to 5.
That's very, very neat.
And that's moved. It's still not matching perfectly, but it's down to match the rest of it. And I can just flip back through the timeline.
Keep going down, Carl, until it gets lined up like a photo.
Yeah, I could do that. Yeah. Summary. Now what you there you can see
There you go.
an issue that you then encounter when you start doing things like this is one change you can make then has a knock-on effect on everything else, and you end up with silly little things happening like that. You see how the line that I drew, which gave me the down angle, is now creating an up angle. So I've got to go back into that drawing, edit the sketch, get rid of the coincidences, rid of the line, rid of that line.
How do you work if you don't have a drawing?
With great difficulty is a short answer. You could work from photos.
Are you normally working from drawing?
Yes. Yeah.
I take it if you didn't have a drawing, you'd have to draw on your own sketch perhaps to work from first.
Yeah, you could do that. You could do that. I've worked from photos before. When I did the EPBs, they were done from photos.
If you know a dimension on a photograph, it is possible to actually calculate the rest of the dimensions. It's not something I know how to do. I know my son does it. He does graphic design.
Yeah.
And I know he can take I try and square up photographs and try and get them on known dimensions. But if you know a dimension, apparently somehow you can actually take any dimension you require once you know something, just irrespective of the angle.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how you do it, but it is possible. So
I've got no idea either.
I use a program called GIMP, which takes out the perspective of photographs. And if I'm trying to do a coach that I can't get a drawing of, I'll find 2 photographs taken from one from each end, put them in GIMP, draw around each photo, overlay them, and then any adjustment that needs to be done, I do then. And some of the stuff I've drawn, when I've eventually got hold of a drawing, I'm pretty damn close. So it's worth looking at GIMP to just.
how's that spelt?
GIMP.
G-I-M-P.
Oh, is it as in GIMP mask? I don't know how I know that. Yeah.
Yes.
Can I butt in?
Yeah.
Dave Smith. I'm not sure what you did with EPBs and you were working from photos, but
yeah,
maybe a lot of people don't know that I've measured a lot of EMUs and also photographed the roofs and the underframes and measured the underframes.
Mm-hmm.
So if someone's doing anything on those, I may just have the item you need or someone needs.
That could be useful to go back into it to do more detail on it.
Yeah. Anyone's welcome to ask, of course.
Thank you. Okay, so now looking at that, now that we've done all those changes, that's pretty much where it should be. Okay, so the last thing I'm going to do on here is I've got to do the handrails. The problem with handrails on the printers, you don't get particularly fine, especially if you're printing them horizontally like that. What I did when I printed the IVAs is I just printed sort of like small rectangles to give the impression of them. I'm going to leave them off here for the moment, and potentially I can add them in later if I wanted to. Because I'm going to jump ahead a little bit and say that's roughly complete. So what I'm then going to work on is the underframe. So again, I'm going to go create a new component. Rename that.
thought Phil calls that the chassis.
Chassis, spelt weird, yeah?
Bollocks.
Okay, so again, drawing it, I'm going to use the bottom profile of the hopper, and you can see how it's now drawn all the ribs on as well. Now the underframe part, I need those ribs on, so I just extrude that down to match. Okay, so that's the bottom part of the hopper drawn. There is like a rib that goes around the ribs themselves. Just give you sort of like an outline detail. To draw that, you can use a similar process as what I did for patterning. So I just draw a sketch on that plane, and use the line tool. So I want to go from that edge, so select the corner, slightly out, go to that corner, define the distance from there to the edge of the rib as 0.1 millimeters, and then I can draw a triangular shape. I'm going to define the degrees as 112, lock that in the bottom there, same on this side. 112. So you see this one won't lock, there it is, locked in. Okay, so now I'm going to select that I've just drawn, extrude, give it a thickness of 0.2. So I've now got that rib shape there. And then again, using the same pattern tool, select the feature that I've just done, that one, the direction, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Direction that way. Now you can see what's happened here is because I've joined that triangular bit to the floor, it's now dragging the floor out, so it's trying to copy the floor. So I'm going to cancel that, go back into that extrusion that I did, edit it, and rather than telling it to join, I'm just going to create a new body. And then when I go back into pattern, it will select that feature, but purely just the triangular part of it. Select the direction. 1, 2.
In Fusion, do you have the option of working on layers as you do with in traditional AutoCAD?
Never used traditional AutoCAD, so I don't know.
Okay, right. So layers like think of it like a separate piece of paper if you were doing a drawing, and you can view layers or not, so you can turn them on and off. So
the best way that I could imagine that in Fusion would be the components rather than layers. Yeah. I'm just going to restart that because that seems to be a bit weird. Redefine that direction. Okay, they're all centered. So now I've got a pattern with all of those triangular bits added. And the problem you've got, or I've got at the moment now, because I had to create them as separate bodies, I've now got a list here of all these different individual bodies. So you can turn them all on and off, which is great, but I need them to all be joined to the top one. So I'm just going to combine using the top one as my target body, and then selecting all the other ones, tell it to join. They're now all added in on that side, and they're part of that body floor. Again, I could draw these on the other side, but rather than doing that, I would just split this under flame 2 again. So if I bring back that construction plane, which I had on that one, that, and then I can split the body, use selecting the bottom body, splitting tool, that plane, and then hide that side that I don't want, mirror the side that I want to keep. It's now got all those supports on. Mirror plane, that side. So I've now got the extra bits around the bottom on both sides, and then combine that and that one. Bring that back in. Any questions there at that?
Are you going to do the other? There's another something similar to those bottom. What are they?
Top edge.
Yeah, yeah, that.
Yeah.
And that's kind of also has a rail between all the way along, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. So what I can do then is I can either go back in and draw them again on the top edge, hide that top body, or you could cheat, which is a bit of a pain to do, and just drag those up and then delete them again in the middle. If I give you an example of that, come to this side, I can drag, extrude that back. If I go back for patterning, I could drag that up again there, and then delete the bit in the middle, which would be probably a pain in the backside to do, because you'd have to do them each individually. So what I'd rather do is just draw them again. So again, in the timeline, I've gone back to before the patterning, do exactly the same, do a sketch on the top edge, and just draw that down again. The next, I'm going to show a coincidence here, horizontal, vertical. But what that does is allows me to put this point here in line with that one there, and the same that side there. So they're now exactly the same both sides. Extrude that, come down 0.2 millimeters. So if I skip across, now you can see where I've drawn that one, all the patterns are still there for the rest. If I go back into pattern here, edit feature, I can then add at the top of the objects, add in that one I've just drawn, and that will then automatically drag them all the way across. So you can see how you can go back in your timeline to make a change, and then it automatically changes the rest of it if you needed it to. And then, as Guy pointed out as well, there's also like a rib that runs along here. That one's going to be a bit more complicated. I'm going to draw on that edge a rectangle going from there. I'm going to drag it all the way across. And this corner here, it won't snap into the corner, so I'm going to leave it. Create a coincidence from that corner to that one. Define the height from there to there as the 0.2 top edges. And then what I've then got to do is extrude that out. Make sure it's not cut. I want it to join. So now I've got that top. That's it in that direction. That top rib there. Any more questions at that point? No. Okay. Probably the next thing I would draw in is the two, I would say buffer beams, but they've not got buffers. They're centers of buckeyes. So I'll just draw this headstock, is it?
Yes.
Draw on that bottom edge.
Foster Yeoman ones have got buffers, or some of them did. There was
And the outers as well. The outers on these, yeah.
And there were ones which were just buffered at both ends as well. The first batch.
Yeah.
Carl, do you need that art you just draw on that edge to go to the buffer beam?
Sorry?
That strip you just added above.
This one here?
Yeah. No. The one you did before, they started that.
Ah, yes. It's not drawn across here.
Ends.
Yeah. Well spotted. I'll go back and change that in a second.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to extrude that down. Match the drawing. Okay. So I could go back in the history, and I think what's happened is it's not selected that part correctly. I'm actually going to cheat a little bit, just crack that there, extrude it to the end. And I didn't draw it on this side either. Yeah, so looking at this side, what's happened is when I selected the box the first time round, not selected this bit as well. So that's now added in. Add that. Stop this side. Notice that I'm running out of time here. Does anybody got any questions? We're finishing my part shortly. Chat. Side lads, you could mark dimples to fit wire. Yeah, do that. Or could etching's the other option for the ladders.
I've got another question then, Carl.
Yeah.
So one of the things that both Phil and I found when using the these types of printers, the Photon, and I think what's the other one that's similar? I don't know which one you have, but ones that use.
I've got a Photon.
Yeah, a Photon as well. there's a bit with some of the materials. There's like a light bleed effect. So that means that any holes that you cut end up being smaller than you define them, and the parts themselves end up growing slightly. So it doesn't. I just think that you might need to compensate for that effect on the cutouts at the end in particular. You might find that they're when you print them, they'll print
slightly short, slightly narrow.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, all the other parts, I don't think the effect you won't really see, but you'll see it, I think, on those cutouts.
Doesn't that depend on what slicing software you're using? I was told that Cura can actually allow for material thickness. I suppose that's for a plastic print, I suppose, but it's resin,
Yeah, I think the issue we're looking at with the resin, because it's a liquid, sits in there, and you end up with the light bleeding through, and it just fuses it as well.
So there's different. What is worth saying is that there are different materials exhibit that bleed effect to better or worse, right?
Different colours as well.
Yeah, different colours as well. So the ones that we've been successful with are red and black, because red is at the other end of the spectrum from UV that is used. So it's basically opaque to UV light, and then black as well. So
I seem to be getting good results with white as well.
What resin are you using, Carl?
1 second, I'll just grab a bottle. So it's, get rid of the background. 1 second.
Yeah.
I think I've got to stop sharing for that. Can't stop sharing. There you go. Any cubic photon resin. It's a white colour.
Yeah. Yeah.
White colour. It cures at 405 nm wavelength.
Yeah. Yeah, because I didn't like the Anycubic. It really smells.
Sorry?
What really smells the Anycubic resin?
Most resins do.
I went on to...
The Elegoo is much less smelly than the Anycubic. What are you using, Phil? What's that new one you found?
Yeah, well, because I'm trying to make masters for casting, I'm using, it's a German one called Druckveig. D-R-U-C-K and then W, but the Germans pronounce it as V, E-E, and they're resin D. And but that's got that's a harder material for you know, because it's going to be put up to 70 degrees C.
Druck, what? W-E-D-E?
No, W-E-G-E.
Oh, G-E. Druckveig, I think. Oh, right, yeah.
Resin D. But unfortunately, the black, it takes 18 seconds exposure time.
Wow, that's a long time.
Yeah. But, you know, you want masters.
Yeah.
So...
No, I've got one, thanks.
What was that? So the white I'm using, I've got an exposure time of 7 seconds on it.
Yeah.
Which is very similar to the Elegoo red and black as well.
Yeah.
Which I think is, I remember that.
Obviously, the more exposure time that you use, the longer the print takes. So,
have you seen, there's some quite cool calibration stuff on the
little skyline.
You can print different timings and then see how to minimize that bleed effect and what the optimum time is in order to minimize that.
Yeah.
That's all on the Photon sort of user groups and stuff.
Or I think I'll have to leave it there, looking at the time, so we don't run into Bill's slot.
Yeah, well, I had to nip out and have a personal needs break, for want of a better term, before I started, and I made myself a cup of tea. So
yeah.
Well, if you just wanted a few minutes, everyone's got any more questions?
Yeah. Obviously, I'm more than happy that if anyone wants to message me personally, I'm happy to walk them through some stuff, help them out with anything they need. So,
the software, Carl, looks awesome.
I found it really useful.
I'm gonna have a go with it. I've just downloaded it while you were. So I think my productivity will increase phenomenally with that, and they do a Mac version, which, you know, hallelujah. Most of the reason I'm not using CAD software is I find it hard to find a Mac version, but I've done the same as you. Got the Fusion 360 free version. But that, how did you learn? Are there good tutorials for Fusion 360, or did you watch videos on YouTube?
I learned two ways. One is by playing with it, and the other was YouTube videos.
Oh right. Carl, can you tell us what the software is again, please?
It's Autodesk Fusion 360.
Autodesk Fusion 360. Okay.
Yeah.
And it's a free one, is it?
Yes.
It's a mixture of free and paid. The hobbyist version is free, but it maintains the same functionality. They just have restrictions that you shouldn't be selling your stuff, really.
The version you use, is that the paying one?
No, it's a free version.
Okay.
Maintains the same functionality.
Right. Good. Brilliant.
And Carl, didn't you need to boost your computer as well?
Yeah, realistically, I had only 4 megabytes of RAM on our laptop, which was rubbish for the laptop in the first place, and it was a bit of a pig to run, especially when I went on to do something difficult like the tram. I've upped the RAM in the laptop to 16 gigabytes, which is why it runs relatively quickly, no matter what I'm trying to get it to do.
Are you right? Is it a PC Mac, or is it a PC laptop?
Yeah, PC. Yeah.
Obviously, that because the RAM depends on, if you're using older operating systems, they won't recognise the high level of RAM. So you might, depending on your machine, you might even need to upgrade the operating software.
Yeah.
If you're running an operating system that needs that problem, you're probably not going to be able to run the latest version of Fusion anyway.
No, that's what I was thinking, because you need. Are you saying you need 16 megabytes of RAM?
Gigabytes. They state that you need 8 is their minimum. I was getting it to work before, but it was very slow.
Have you got a video card in there as well?
Nope. No.
Well,
as you see how long that took to load this. Every time I would make a change on this, I was looking at 20 minutes to make one simple change.
There is another product that has lower memory usage that works in a mostly similar way, that I believe has similar licensing restrictions. You know, you can use it free so long as you're not sort of creating a product to sell or anything like that kind of thing, running a business, and that is Design Spark.
Yeah. Plenty of bits of software out there. It's just whatever you find works best for you. I was put onto this by another modeler and learned through this, and I'm more than happy with it. I know Andy Porter's tried it, and he said he didn't particularly get on with it because he's come from another piece of software. He just couldn't find the switch over particularly well.
That is the problem. If you're used to using, if you spend a lot of time using one particular CAD package and you move to something else, you're always trying to look. We've just moved our accounting package over from an exactly the same one. I was trying to look at one way of the way you used to do it, and you've got to look at it differently.
Yeah.
It's practice, really, isn't it?
Yeah. Well,
So, considering you've not had any,
I've had no training, and I only started learning CAD 2 weeks after I got back from Lid last year.
yeah, it's pretty impressive.
Yeah, definitely.
It's got a steep learning curve, but if you put the time in, it's doable. Any more questions?
I think there's a lot to learn there, Carl, but that was brilliant. Thanks a lot.
You're welcome.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thanks,
thank
Carl.
you. Very interesting.
Yeah, very good. Thanks.
Very, very impressive.
As I say, anybody wants any help, they want to start learning it, I'm more than happy to give them some help with it. Other than that, I'll pass the floor over to...
Hi everyone. Having finished drawing off the TML boxes, I thought it'd be worthwhile now showing you what I do to transfer the files through to the slicing software, adding supports, and then transferring those files into the printer. So the first thing I need to do is I'll show you that I've put in a couple of brace beams going across the wagon just to hold its shape while it's cured after printing. Hopefully that should stop it bowing outwards. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is select File, 3D Print, select the upper body, and then I'm going to save that into a TML folder, and then I'm going to do the same by File, 3D Print, and selecting the under frame, doing the same, and adding that into the same folder. And I'm going to come into my Anycubic Photon Slicer software. There's various different softwares you can use. Another quite popular one is Chitubox, but at the moment they've done an update on it and it's a bit buggy and sometimes crashes out. I'm just going to use this one instead. I'm going to open up the folder that I was in and select the body to start with. That then adds the body in. I'm going to rotate it through on its axis. No, not that one. You can see as I'm changing what it's doing to the file, it's moving it around within the print bed. As you see, I've now orientated it so it's flat to the bed and also runs along the length. Okay. So what I'm then going to do is I've moved it to the side and then I'm going to add in the supports to go underneath. I'm going to add in medium supports, they give us the best strength. I'm going to rotate to come underneath, and I'm going to start adding supports around the outside edges. I'm just placing these randomly around the model. The more supports you have, the more resin you use, obviously, but also the potential of more strength to the model as it prints. I'm printing this one flat to the bed so that I don't produce any islands when the printer starts to produce the handrail section. This should hopefully give me some reasonable supports with those areas. This process can be quite slow, laborious, especially if you're doing quite complicated models. What you've got to try and do is support the model, but also make sure you're not producing any islands where the printer can't actually get to the model and it produces something that floats off in space. Okay, so that's the outside of the bottom supported. I'm now going to go across those centre braces to give them a bit of support as they print. Including the upper one as well. Okay, so now you can see how the support's now all underneath the wagon. I'm bracing it so that it prints, and I'm also then going to add in some supports to the bottom of the railings. Obviously, wherever the supports connect to, when it prints, you're then going to also get slight dimples and imperfections. These are easily cleaned up with just a file afterwards. Okay, so that's that hopper supported all the way around, just checking to make sure there's no connecting bits that you don't want to damage the model. Looks good. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm also going to add in the underframe, which can print at the same time. Where's it gone? Right, let's try again. So, underframe. Okay, again, going to rotate that through 90 degrees. Move it out of the way slightly. And I'm going to print this face down so that the supports are all on the inside of the hopper. So rotate that through 180 degrees, so it's now upside down. What I'm also going to do is going to put a bit of an angle on this one. I'm going to go for maybe probably too much, 10%. Ooh. Okay, the reason I'm putting an angle on here so that I don't end up when it prints having a large flat section flat to the bread, the print bed, because that will then cause suction effects and potentially peeling forces will cause the print to offset, so you don't get a nice smooth finish. So same again, I'm going to go underneath the model and add in supports. Because it's an angle, what I need to do is make sure that I get the first set of support right up against the lower edge so that they're on the lowest point, so there's no island there. And then same as before, I'm just going to go along the model, adding those in. You can see how I'm not doing them all exactly in a straight line, so that they're all offset slightly, giving the printer a bit of a smoother floor to printing. That's down one side, and then going to go down the next side. And then I'm just going to do the same by just going randomly across the middle, adding these supports in. What I'm looking to do is try and have every bit supported so that as it prints, it's got something to key to. And as I rotate, you can see that I've now got a green floor that completely covers the bottom of the model, so it should all be supported there. Come back out of that part. I've then got the two models within the software, okay. So the next thing I'm going to do is slice the print file. what this does is it creates a file that the printer can actually read. So each slice or layer is what the printer will print at a time. Depending on how big the file is, this can take quite a while. Obviously, the grey box here is what the printer can do, so the volume you can do. Some files will have to print up or end, and if you start coming up quite high, the time it takes to print the file can become quite extreme. I print with a layer thickness of 0.03, and I'm using the white resin, so I'm using 10-second normal exposure time, with the printer being off for 6.5 seconds. The bottom layers are the first 7 layers. I print at 110-second exposure time to make sure they adhere fully to the print bed and it sticks. Okay, so as you can see here, it's going to tell me that to print this, it's going to take approximately 2.5 hours. That's now created the file. So the next thing we're going to do is I'm going to open up Photon File Validator. This basically checks the file to make sure that I've got no islands that are floating, and to make sure that the file is sliced correctly with no erroneous bits sticking out. So I'm going to open up the TML boxes file. This then loads in, and you can see that it's going to run through every single layer. So there's 520 layers. And basically all it's doing is going through each layer, as I say, and it's looking to make sure there's no islands that are unsupported. As you can see, this is relatively quick with 520 layers. It's not going to take too long, 30 seconds at the most. The next thing it will do is it will tell me if this file's okay, which it's not, because it says an unsupported island found in layer 482. So if I go to fix, it says 287 pixels. So I'm going to click on start. It says nothing can be done. So what I can then do is go and look at the file and find the unsupported section. Okay, so what I'm actually going to do is going to cheat a little bit here. I could go back in and add some supports in, but what I'm going to do is I'm just going to draw them in, connecting the unsupported bit to a supported bit. And the reason I'm doing it this way is on the next layer, this part's already connected. So I'm not going to actually lose anything by doing this. It also means I don't have to add in extra supports. Okay, so that's now all connected. If we go up to the next layer, you see it's already connected anyhow, so there's no issue there, and it's connected fully on as it goes beyond that file point. So now it's saying there's no safety margin set printed to the border, and all is good, so no unsupported files. So I can then save that, create a new file called a -1 photon. Essentially, this is the file that the printer can now read. Having clicked OK, that's everything complete, and now I'm ready to transfer this across into the printer, which is just a case of transferring the file off of the computer onto a memory stick and then adding that into the printer.